Hey there, Resume Leslie here, and welcome to the July episode of Behind Hiring. I'm happy to be live with you once again, co-hosting with Niatu Binci-Angel. Hey Niatu, how are ya?
I'm good. July is my birthday month, so I am
Ooh,
I'm chilling.
nice, nice. When's your birthday?
July 20th.
Ooh, still coming up. You got any big
Yep.
plans?
So I am a huge beach lover, beach person, and so I try to organize an annual birthday beach trip, which is coming up this Saturday. Is the plan at the moment. Hoping the weather holds out. It's looking a little bit iffy right now. I'm tracking intensely every single day, but I hope to still go regardless. Very often, if it looks cloudy in the forecast, somehow the beach always turns out good. So I'm hoping that streak of luck continues, and that's the plan
Nice.
for the moment. Yeah, and maybe get
Right
some axe
on.
throwing in at some point, later in the week.
Yes,
Those are plans.
yes. Andy and I did some axe throwing a couple of years ago for the first time when it was sort of just coming out. That is fun.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, I did it for my bachelor party last year before the pandemic hit. I got married in February of
Ooh,
2020.
yeah,
And yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I have not been able to go back since. So I want to return and throw some tomahawks at a target, which is a lot of
right
fun.
on. Yeah, super duper cool. Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for being back with us. We've got some folks here. We've got Fran from Richmond, British Columbia, Canada. We've got Andy, my partner in there from West Yellowstone, Montana. For those of you who have been following me, we were supposed to be in Northern California, but that sort of blew up on us. So now we're in West Yellowstone, Montana. I will have more info on that starting tomorrow. About kind of how the last 2 months have gone for us. We've got Julie here from Oklahoma. We've got another Canadian here. Andrea, hello. Thank you guys, everybody, for being here. This is awesome. Before we bring on our guest, Niatu, you've got some exciting news. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I actually got approved for LinkedIn Live a few weeks ago, and so I am going to be broadcasting you guys live with my own show starting in August. Everything's still a work in progress. I'm thinking about calling it ACT, hashtag ACT, which should be Avenue Career Thursdays. I don't know what you guys think about that. And if you even think about, act on your career as the play or the spin off of that hashtag, but that's the work in progress, and I'm going to be coming to you live to provide my thoughts, my insights on the job search, networking, interviewing, all the things that Lezlie and I talk about on the daily basis on the platform. That's what I hope to bring to you through this new show, and we shall see, how it turns out. So I'm going to be making foray into going live on LinkedIn solo. And then, of course, I'll still have this platform that I share with Lezlie and just kind of take inspiration from her and launch my own thing as well.
Nice. I love that. I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited to see what you come up with and what you bring to people. Real quickly, we've got Simona who says happy birthday to you. So we
Thanks a lot,
wanted to
Simone.
bring
Appreciate
that
it.
in. She is watching from Cleveland, she says. Excellent. Let's see, guys. Andy is telling me that we've got captions going on the live recording. I'm not sure that's 100% what we want. So let me see if I can maybe turn that off. This is my first time being on StreamYard. We have been previously on Restream. So this is my first time being on StreamYard, and I did not realize that there would be captions. So I'm not 100% sure how to fix that. Hopefully we can just work with that and it's not too terribly much of an issue. You guys let me know if in the comments if it is an issue, or if anybody knows Restream, if you want to let us know in the comments how to turn that off. That would be really cool. Oh, I'm sorry, StreamYard, not Restream. If anybody knows StreamYard, that's the one we're on. If anybody knows it, please comment and let us know if you know how to turn off the captions. But otherwise, we will just keep going here. So that's everything I have on my notes. as far as announcements. Today, we have brought in an awesome guest. We are going to be talking to Teegan Bartos. She has behind the scenes knowledge from her time working in grants for the Department of Labor. She actually worked with WIOA grants, which is Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. She also has experience as a recruiter and now as a consultant. Welcome, Teegan. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Hi, guys.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. It's rainy here in Chicago.
Fair enough. So one of the things that we were talking about before we hopped on live was trying to figure out, now that we have StreamYard, which of these layouts would be best. And I thought if there's anybody in the comments that can give us some feedback, that would be great. So we have 3 different layouts to kind of choose from. We could do something like this, where we're all right next to each other. We could do a second one like this, where we're sort of blocked out across the screen. Or we could do one like this, where we can make the guest have a little bit more of a featured spot, and then the 2 of us are over on the side. So those are just some thoughts. Feel free to let us know in the comments what you like. Again, we've got this option here, we've got this option here, or we've got a third option here. For right now, we're just going to stick with this one. And if we get feedback that you guys like something different, then we'll switch it up for the next time. Cool. Okay, well, Teegan, do you want to start by just kind of giving us a little bit of a summary of your background and how you wound up as a career coach and consultant?
Yeah, sure. So I never even knew what career coaching was. Early on in my career, I wanted to be a special education instructor. I have multiple learning disabilities and come from an underfunded community where access to quality services are just non-existent. But I hated my classes. So I switched over to psychology. And at that time, my stepdad got cancer, had to come home to go to community college, and was invited to be a part of a pilot program at Joliet Job Corps for the psychology department. It was at my time there where I was like, wow, the criminal justice system's really messed up. Got an internship at Cook County Juvenile Detention Facility, but it was rescinded due to the recession way back when, and was scrambling to find another internship. Job Corps was nice enough to let me come back. And at the time, Career Preparation Week 1 instructor was dealing with some health issues and convinced the leadership team to allow me to facilitate her class until she could come back. Was eventually tapped to teach Career Preparation Week 2, and then later tapped to facilitate Career Preparation Week 3. So career coaching to me, it was, hey, you have this option. This is what you're going to do. And I loved it. Never, ever thought I was going to become a career coach, and then applied for the career preparation instructor position and didn't get it. So I was crushed. But, everything happens for a reason. So at the time, my stepdad got cancer. My grandmother passed away, and I had to close out her business. And then eventually got a call saying, hey, there's a career preparation instructor position open. Come to Indiana. Went to Indiana, had a fantastic leadership team, was given a lot of room for innovation and creativity, was eventually promoted to become the leadership coordinator. And then that was an awesome experience, because as the leadership coordinator, I got a seat at the executive table and I got to work with frontline leaders. So it was cool to see both worlds. Eventually was smashed by a fuel tanker semi truck and was on bed rest. And so, yeah, so I wrote resumes freelance, like it was just a side hustle for me. That's how I started. And I learned that it's not just young people who need help. It's mid to senior level leaders as well. One resume got somebody a promotion, which helped their family be in a better financial position. One resume helps, somebody get out of a toxic environment and was so much better for, her mental health. And I was like, wow, I actually think I want to work with mid to senior level leaders. So worked for another WIOA program and was working with people who had experienced unemployment or reduction in force, a little bit of low income, and a lot of veterans. And so that gave me, a breadth of experience working with Fortune 100 companies, really understanding what companies look for, how they make termination decisions, how they make hiring decisions. And eventually, I didn't want to work 2 jobs anymore. I don't know if anybody has ever worked for a nonprofit, but they don't pay well. And so became a recruiter for a staffing agency, which is very different than in-house corporate recruiting. And was exposed to a lot. I knew my account manager, and he gave me a lot more responsibilities than the average recruiter was given. It was a great learning experience, but it wasn't really for me. So I decided to leave and opened up Jolt Your Career, which is a resume writing and career coaching practice, and haven't looked back since. So that's me and my story, and I'm happy to be here today.
Nice. Very,
That's
very
quite
cool.
the origin story.
My thoughts
Includes,
exactly.
yeah, being smashed by a truck and all these like stops and starts, but here you are, and all that knowledge and experience is getting poured into your clients, and is going to help you, speak to us and our audience today and drop a lot of really helpful and useful knowledge.
Yes.
That's the one thing about when things aren't linear. When things are messy, you get to learn a lot. And then when you're, generous with your knowledge, other people can learn from your mistakes so they don't have to go through as much pain along the way.
There we go. I like that.
Me too. I love that that's your focus. Like, hey, I can share my mistakes so other people don't have to make them. That's definitely part of why I love doing this, what we all do. So I love that you touched on that. I know we were talking before we went live about how it's pretty atypical to have a linear progression into being a career coach. But even though yours was nonlinear, a lot of your background has really kind of always centered around this area, which isn't common for a lot of us. So I think that's really, really neat. And I'm curious if you have any big takeaways that you can share about the hiring process that you learned from having kind of a really comprehensive background in all of that.
Yeah. So the biggest takeaway about the hiring process is, well, first, every organization is different, and understanding the cultural differences or the nuances between different organizations or different industries is really helpful to not get as frustrated with the process. So if you can understand that, maybe in one type of industry, like the creative space, marketing space, for example, there's a lot of age discrimination that goes on, and you have to really leverage who you know in that space to get to where you want to be. And so to make sure that you're building those bridges and that you're strategically building relationships and being really thoughtful in that. Where in some other industries like manufacturing, for example, there's a lot of people who can hustle in manufacturing and work their way up from the bottom and, start and open up their own manufacturing plant on their own. And so my biggest takeaway would be really understanding the industry that you're in or the industry that you're looking to go into, and then leveraging strategies based on what you've learned from that to have a more pleasant experience throughout the process.
I love that. That's something that I wish somebody had told me earlier on in my career. I really, truly did the thing you're not supposed to do, which is I just got a job and then I worked it and I did well. I wasn't a bad employee, but I didn't track anything. I didn't think about anything. I didn't think about the next job. I had no strategy at all. And I love that there are people like you out there, like myself and Nia too. I know we talk about this as like really being thoughtful and strategic and all of that. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, so many people think, oh, my company is going to have the best interest for me. But at the end of the day, like your leader may, your manager may, but a business is a business. And so they're not going to teach you how to get to that next company. And in their mind, they have a succession plan in place. And so you may not be a part of that succession plan. And those types of things, they want to keep you happy. So they may not tell you that. And there's a lot of even political things that you have to navigate in the job search process, whether you're making an internal move, an external move, or switching industries to keep into consideration. So that research is key.
Yeah, no, that's a really great segue to my next question because, you helped us to understand the macro level of things in terms of really understanding your industry and knowing how to navigate in that space, in that sandbox or playground, if you like. But then when we get down into the actual decision-making process when it comes to considering candidates, you promised or you said, in your comment on my post about today that, you could offer the opportunity of being that fly on the wall in those rooms, the room where it happened, if you're a Hamilton fan, for where these decisions are being made. And so could you help us understand what the conversations that decision makers are having behind closed doors? What do those sound like is part one. And then part two, what tips can you offer to our audience to help them position themselves to be the candidate being spoken of positively in those rooms?
Yeah. Well, you got to remember hiring managers are people, and people are flawed. And they have to work within the constraints of their organizational structure, which we know many organizational structure are flawed. Our current hiring system, there are a lot of areas of improvement. And a lot of that is based on fear. And some of that is based on, policies and technology and things of that matter. But in general, the conversation looks like this. I'm a recruiter. I am going to, already have the rec from the hiring manager. I'm going to know what their bare minimums are, what their wish list is. I'm going to do the pre-screenings, and then I'm going to present to them some, individual candidates and say, okay, you want to interview 7 people here, are 15, which 7, would you like? So then they're going to take some time, and I'm going to tell them, I'm going to give them basically a report. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, essentially. And then they're going to select who they want to interview. And a lot of times what happens is they're going to consult their trusted circle. So when you think about who do I interact with in my business unit, they're going to have to interact with this person. I want to get some feedback. And so, speaking to other leaders, speaking to people on the team, that actually happens in the decision-making process. And I don't think that that's talked about a lot. You think, oh, well, the hiring managers just picks. Well, the hiring managers not only getting feedback from the recruiter, they may be getting feedback from a referral. They may be getting feedback, from other peers. Maybe they've worked with individuals or came from this candidate's, company. What is the reputation from candidates coming from that company? Do you remember working with this person? Things like that. Those conversations happen. So, more experienced leaders are going to have more confidence, and less experienced leaders may be fearful to make the wrong decision. And once the interview process starts, they might be thinking, oh, okay, well, now I want to add this, or now I want to, now this isn't as important. And they kind of change their mind. And so it really varies on person to person, but there is a lot of peer pressure when making a decision. They want to get other people's feedback in regards to, hey, do you think this candidate would be a good fit for our team? Because they're going to impact you as well. So my tips for candidates would be, if possible, reach out to hiring managers or reach out to individuals that hiring manager may have interactions with. On your resume, highlight that you have experience collaborating with other business units, and what did that interaction look like, and really know the role. If you have a resume where it's like, wow, this person clearly knows what they're going to have to do in this role, and it's not just a regurgitation of, this is what I did at my previous role, it's this is what I was able to accomplish at my previous role that will benefit your role, your institution, your business unit, your team. That is going to bring that a positive attention to these conversations, especially if you're sincere in your content. And so give people the language you want them to use when you're not in the room. if you have a summary statement or a professional branding statement at the top of your resume, that's how they're going to speak to you. They're going to use the words that you chose to use. So if you used senior leader, they're going to think, oh, well, this person, age discrimination might come up. But if you use, strategic thought leader or, influencing, C-suite or whatever it may be to make, they're going to use that language when speaking about you. And I think that's the best tip I could give somebody. Use the language you want to have when you're not in the room.
Okay, great. Wow, there's so many bits that I want to follow up on, but the key takeaways that I'm getting, this last passage that you just shared is about controlling your own narrative, right? And so I just want to highlight that for everybody listening. And so you have that ability in your resume, you have the ability in your cover letter, and you also have that ability relating to her previous point in terms of networking.
Yep.
And so if you follow Teegan's advice and let's say you look up a company on LinkedIn, you figure out who the hiring manager would be for the department that you'd be working for, try and figure out who some of the teammates might be that you'd be working with as colleagues in that department, and intentionally try to network and outreach to them and build relationships in parallel to or ahead of you applying or being in the interview process. And so that feeds into your where you started, in that if you've done the work to control a narrative, you built relationships, when it comes to that conversation in the room, they're going to be talking about you in a positive way because they might know you a little bit. And then you've already taken the chance to describe to them how you want them to see you, and they'll be talking about you hopefully in that way.
Yeah.
And that's really, really powerful. The one thing I want to follow up on is about that fear aspect that you mentioned in the very beginning. And so I'm curious to understand a bit further, because fear is a big driver and motivator of behavior. We do a lot of things out of fear. And so in the hiring process, does this lead employers to take the safest possible route in terms of, okay, this person, is a square peg for a square hole. Let's take of these 15 resumes you presented, these 7 are the closest, best possible fit. Does it lead them in that direction? Or what other effects? And sort of the other side of it is then, as the the candidate, how do you overcome that fear that hiring managers might have, but they're not obviously going to tell you about it, right? How do you get around that fear that makes them not want to consider you if you're not maybe so traditional or what have you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was just on a little professional retreat this weekend, and this is something that we talked about. Individuals coming from a variety of industries, and actually, it's not square peg fitting in square hole. It's the fear is taking too much time to decide on who they want to select, and then missing out on that ideal candidate, because then that candidate has moved on by the time they've made a decision. And so then they have to resort back to, other individuals that may have not been the best fit in the first place. Another aspect of fear is, if this person is that good, will they take my job? And that's a leader you don't want to work for anyways. So
For sure.
That you dodged a bullet. But I've experienced it, and I know a lot of the professionals that I've worked with have experienced that, where maybe a project isn't going well and the leader is going to hire somebody on to become that scapegoat, or maybe that leader is struggling with something and doesn't have, the development that they need within their organization to feel confident enough to hire someone who will complement their weaknesses, and select someone who maybe isn't the best fit for the role out of fear that their role may potentially be impacted. And at the end of the day, hiring managers are people. And so that's why it's really important to be thoughtful in the interview process. So you're figuring out, what kind of leader am I going to go work for? And when you are in a situation where there may be some integrity red flags, run.
Yep.
Yep.
No, That's really amazing feedback, and thank you. I mean, I didn't think that fear would necessarily like take that direction in terms of how it impacts employers, but it's helpful to get inside, their perspective, if you like. And so it sounds like if they're worrying about, missing the right candidate, maybe on the job seeker side, make it clear to them that you are the right candidate. Really let them know that you want the job, and kind of make that ask so that they don't, look past you. Switching gears a bit, I want to go back to what you shared about your background in terms of working with a really diverse range of professionals, including those impacted by RIFs, those coming from impoverished backgrounds, those who are unemployed, and veterans. Within my personal LinkedIn feed, I don't often come across a lot of content that specifically addresses those populations or people who identify with those descriptors. And so I was wondering if you could provide maybe one or two tips that would support each of those populations around their job search, process. So we're serving as broad an audience and being as inclusive as we can on this platform.
Yeah. So what is said behind closed doors is, oh, you were unemployed, so you're a B or C player. That is the concern. Organizations don't want to invest in B or C players. They want an A player. They want somebody who's going to come in and make an impact. And so there are times where maybe there wasn't a good fit, or maybe there was something, maybe you were making an impact, but the organization in general, wasn't able to recover. Those are where you can utilize a cover letter to explain that. And so, everybody says, oh, well, people should just understand why people were let go during the recession or during COVID. But the thought still crosses people's mind as why them and not somebody else? If the company didn't completely fail, why were these decisions made? Because at the end of the day, businesses are going to find a way to keep their top employees if they can. And so it does raise an alarm. And I'm, sorry if this is triggering to anyone who's currently experiencing this, but you have the power to control your narrative by your professional marketing material. So prove you're not that B or C player, or if you are a B or C player, then what have you done to improve upon that? For those individuals impacted by reduction in forces, RIFs, which means an organization is laying off more than, I think, 40,000 people or something like that. A lot of times it happens when organizations end up, relocating overseas or things like that. The government requires companies to provide services to their employees. Well, why you? Maybe you need to upskill. That's when those WIOA programs come into play, where you can, instead of saying, I'm currently unemployed, yes, I was let go, and since then I've gotten my official PMP, or I went back maybe before I was a marketing director, and during this time of my unemployment, I've now gotten my digital marketing degree, or added that credential onto my already existing degree. And so for individuals impacted by unemployment or RIFs, I think it's important to just go ahead and outright explain what happened. If it was a misalignment, say it was a misalignment, and that you're better aligned with X, Y, and Z role. That was a learning lesson for you. Maybe you just it wasn't a good fit. But if it was a matter of an underperforming department, and you were able to make some improvements in it, even though the organization itself failed, explain that. I'm motivated by a challenge, and I'm not going to back down from a difficult situation. I love turning underperforming teams into performing teams. I was able to make this amount of progress during my time here, but unfortunately, large scale picture, the company failed. But during my time here, I was able to make these improvements. So that's unemployment and RIF. For individuals who are veterans have fantastic experience. The thing is, though, military experience and corporate jargon, you're in two different worlds. So take the time to learn corporate jargon and then translate your military gibberish into corporate jargon. less about the missions and more about the strategy, and the collaboration and the things that are going to translate into corporate versus specific. Because I think it's difficult for some veterans, to understand how it's transferable themselves, because they potentially may have never been in a corporate environment before.
Mm-hmm.
So spend that time. And then individuals in poverty, coming from a low income community, I can say for what I have experienced is people don't leave their circle, and you need to expand your circle of influence and expand your thought process and the opportunities that you have available to you if you want your life to be different. So it's very difficult to learn how to think differently when you only surround yourself with people who think like you or what you've ever been exposed to. So go to areas that you might not have ever been exposed to. It's going to be a culture shock and it's going to be uncomfortable, but figure out how to get comfortable so you can bridge that gap in between employment that keeps you in poverty and employment that provides you a living wage, or better than living wage. So there's opportunities for reduction in force, unemployment, veterans, and individuals in poverty. It's different grants that you qualify to where you don't even have to pay to get that continuing education or to get those experiences. Sometimes it's not about education. Sometimes it's truly a matter of what you can get exposure to, who is going to tap you for what opportunity. And when you're in areas that are underserved, you're probably not going to have exposure to the type of opportunities that are going to get you at in your career that you want to be able to get yourself out of poverty. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So just in terms of what I took away from what you shared, we have this consistent theme around controlling your narrative, which I'll speak back to for both the individuals subject to RIFs and the unemployed, and I'll even add a veteran to that, and I'll shape how. You're starting from a place of stigma, unfortunately, if you are unemployed. And unfortunately, the employer is going to have a negative baseline story from the jump. And so you're better off telling your own story, as Teegan was suggesting, in a cover letter or through networking that explains your gap and what happened, so that you are in control once again, and you're filling the gap for them rather than letting their imagination run and invent a really negative story on your behalf. With the veterans, it's about translating your jargon. So again, you're controlling the narrative by telling your story in a language that your audience is going to understand. If they're civilians, they won't understand your rank, certain maneuvers or missions or procedures. So make it accessible to them in their own language so that your story can come through. And then final piece, I hear it as opening yourself up to new opportunities and going beyond, expanding your circles, for lack of a better word, through networking, what have you, so that you can gain access to people, information, and even just the vision of what you can do and what you can be by, broadening your circles, is what I heard from you.
Yeah, yep. You said that much more concisely, which is a perfect reason why you should practice your interview questions beforehand, so you're more eloquent and get your message across more clearly.
All good.
Yeah, I think you did. Yeah, I think you did a great job. And I actually just wanted to touch on the piece where you mentioned about doing things that are uncomfortable. First, sort of just gaining the knowledge of like what needs to be done, but then actually going out and putting yourself in situations that you are not used to so that you can learn and grow. I love that you said that. And I think that it's really important to just draw the parallel between something that you mentioned prior to us going live, which is just that you said that you have maybe some struggles doing public speaking. So you're trying to do it as much as possible to get better at it. Can you tell us more just from a personal perspective of like why that's important and how that's helping you?
I think that, well, that's a good question. I
didn't mean to put you on the spot. I know that wasn't on the list. So
no, that's okay. So I think that a fear of public speaking for me personally is irrational. Nothing's going to happen to me. I'm safe. If someone doesn't like what I have to say, they're they're not my I respect their differences, or they're not my people. And so it's irrational, and it's something that I want to get over, because I my mission in life, like why I feel like I'm here on a spiritual level, is to give back and to help people get to a position in life where they feel safe and feel heard, and they feel like they're making the type of impact in their life that they want to be, whether it's a stay-at-home parent, a volunteer, or a corporate executive. And so if I can get over my fear of public speaking, then I can impact more people. The one-on-one thing is great. I can help people out one-on-one all day, but getting up in front of the masses and sharing insights that may potentially help someone in their journey is something that I have struggled with. And so I'm pushing myself to do it more, so I can genuinely impact more individuals. But it's hard. I don't like it. It's just something that I force myself to do, because I know that will help me get closer to my goal in life.
And that's the piece that I really love and that you touched on, is that you want to get better at a thing that is very difficult, very challenging, brings you a lot of anxiety, whatever. So you push yourself into situations where you have to do it so that you get used to it and you get better at it, because there's a goal you have in life that you probably can't achieve, or is much harder to achieve if you're not doing these things. And so that really parallels well what you were saying about job seekers putting themselves in situations that are uncomfortable because it's good for them. And I love that you practice what you preach, that you're not just telling people to do that's also what you do to better yourself. I love it. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And there's so many different opportunities for individuals who are working on a variety of different skill sets. And it's just a matter of finding it and then doing it. And sometimes having an accountability partner is helpful. It's like, I know how to go to the gym, I just haven't. I know I can work out at home, I just haven't. And so me paying for a personal trainer, I'm now invested in going because I paid for it. And so sometimes when you are looking to make a pivot and looking to do something hard, paying a professional to be an accountability partner to you will give you more of an internal drive. But at times you don't have the luxury of being able to afford those services. So when you are in a category, unemployed, reduction in force, veteran, living in poverty, who has access to programs that will provide those services to you through, the Department of Labor, Congress's WIOA program, use them. And they'll still hold, you're still going into an agreement, even though you don't have to pay for it. You're still going into an agreement with them as an accountability partner to help you bridge some of those gaps.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Got a couple of questions from the audience, just so we can. Let's see. Aldo wants to know, do you think the fear aspect has a lot to do with how the job market is going right now?
No, it's a candidate's market. And effective leaders who know what good looks like, who have confidence in their self and in their decision-making process, they're scooping up talent, and they're doing so in an aggressive way. And this is unprecedented. And so it's an amazing opportunity to leverage what is going on in the world right now. In terms of individuals who have been struggling with finding employment, I think the part of that is potentially time. Juggling, having to take care of kids and a job search, and potentially industries, potentially your strategy. Are you crafting your message correctly? for individuals who are getting hits on their resume is not the problem. Maybe it's the interview. If the interview isn't landing, then maybe it's the networking. And so typically, I'm sure both of you could speak to this. You can speak to a client and you can immediately identify, oh, it's that, let's work on this. And then a couple weeks later, a light bulb's gone off and there's a completely different trajectory on that client's success in their search.
Yep.
Are you guys seeing this the same?
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Definitely.
it's a lot of times, and the same thing with the accountability piece that you were saying. A lot of times clients come to me either because they know they just need the accountability, or they know they need someone to open their eyes to strategies that they're just completely unaware of. I think those are two big things that I work with people on. One more question before we get back into ours. Amy wants to know, why wouldn't hiring managers be knowledgeable and compassionate about how many people lost their jobs through no fault of their own due to the pandemic?
So hiring managers have to think about risk to their business, and they know the pandemic happened and that a lot of businesses lost their business. A lot of organizations have struggled. A lot of organizations have had to make really difficult decisions. But something else that has occurred as innovation has been, it's skyrocketed. Organizations have had to make changes so quickly to stay relevant, to stay active. And so certain industries are more forgiving than others, but certain industries aren't. If you're in a strategic role, if you're in an innovation role, during COVID, this was your time to shine. This was your time to keep your company alive. And in organizations where there could nothing be done, that's going to be a little bit more forgiving, but you want to highlight on what you were able to accomplish before the pandemic, and not blame anyone else, but just kind of be understanding that a hiring manager is going to think, okay, well, there's going to be people who were in more advantageous roles to keep up with the times than people who were impacted. And that is a behind the scenes, fly on the wall type of conversation that typically isn't discussed. And me as a career coach, like, that's not the type of stigma or the low self-esteem that I would put on anybody. It's just the reality that some hiring managers do have that perception, and those hiring managers may not be your people. And so we just want to keep moving on and find an organization who is a little bit more compassionate and can see your value through potentially any bias or fears that you may not be an A player. Yep. Sorry, Amy.
No, I think that's good. And I love your focus on just keeping your power as a job seeker. I think that really makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's move into another question that we did actually have on our list here. I know that we're getting towards the end of our hour. So one of your focuses as a coach is in salary negotiation. And I've seen a lot of your posts on that topic, and they're really good. They give great advice. And for me personally, that's one area that I don't have a lot of experience in. Most of what I know has come from the research and what I've learned since becoming a career coach. So I've personally struggled with feeling a little bit underconfident in that area. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about where your confidence came from in salary negotiation and what advice you would have for job seekers to help them gain confidence in that area.
That's a great question. So my confidence came from working with decision makers and asking them, how do you make these decisions? And well, if this is what the market research is saying, then why are you offering that? And so part of it was when I was working, for the Department of Labor and getting exposure to those those HR leaders. How does comp work in this organization? How is this structured? How do you make sure things are fair and equitable? What are you doing about the age gap? Me asking them those tough questions, just being curious, and then transitioning to a recruiter where, you know, when organizations are working with a staffing agency, a lot of times they're trying to get a lot of bang for their buck. They're trying to get something done quickly. They're trying to get something done on a mass scale, or they're trying to prevent from having to provide, benefits to some type of employee. And so, you know, if market value is, $100,000 and this employer only wants to pay $80,000, well, why? What is your thought process on that? And just checking the hell out of those type of employers and saying like, no, if you want good talent, you have to pay for it. And I was so appalled by so many hiring managers and how they made those decisions. And it was so conflicting to like what HR comp teams were saying that I just kind of dug in. And my brother-in-law is a economist for Cornell, and his niche is in HR comp. And so just like family holidays, we nerd out on these kind of conversations. And my husband is an executive recruiter for a Fortune 50 organization, and he, just nonstop deals with salary and compensation benefits package negotiations for the top of the top candidates. And so just from all those little pieces, I gained a lot of confidence. And so for a job seeker who maybe doesn't have access to all of that, LinkedIn it's linkedin.com/salary. You can go in, see what companies are paying, see what they're listing their recs as. Glassdoor has a salary analyzer as well. And then there's also resources like payscale.com, which is free. You put in your education, your years of experience, what company you're going to, what position it is, and it gives you a range based on geography and things like that. So you can do a lot of the research, which should give you a little bit more confidence. And then I think the next piece in the confidence is knowing what language to use. So you get the offer. And then, I'm excited about this opportunity to work together. Do you mind if I take a day to consider this offer? And then, based on my research, market, the market is this, my value is that, or things like, is that number flexible at all? Or I would be more comfortable if, and starting conversations like that, the thank yous, the sincere excitement, but seeing what wiggle room there is and just opening up that conversation. Because if you're getting a job offer, they're already invested in you and they want you to be happy. They want you to stay. So if you already going into it, what the range is, and then based on what your number needs to be, if they're able to meet you there, and to not wait until an offer is given. Because otherwise, some companies have 8 rounds of interviews. That is a waste of time if you're not in line with comp.
Yep. So it sounds like kind of what you're saying is the best way to gain confidence and be good in negotiation is to arm yourself with knowledge.
Yes.
Knowledge about the market, knowledge about your own value and why, knowledge about that company, knowledge even about, how comp works and things like that. So the best way is either to research or to work with a coach who can help you out with some of that stuff, to get into the companies and really dive in and figure out what it is that they're doing. And if you have the opportunity to sit in front of them, bring that stuff up, let them know that and get the answers that you need or want. And if you don't, then maybe find a better fit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like larger organizations, those recruiters are going to be your friends when having these compensation conversations. Where smaller organizations, you might be working directly with the hiring manager talking about comp. If it's a nonprofit, probably aren't even going to be able to negotiate. If it's a government job, what band you're at. And so really like nonprofits, government, less room, some room, but less room. But for the majority of the clients that I work with who are actually in corporate, there's so much research out there. The only reason why you can't go in feeling confident with your ballpark range is because you didn't do the research. And that proves you're not actually interested in the job. Otherwise, you would have done what it needed to take to be prepared to have these conversations.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I mean, aside from arming yourself with the knowledge, there's that internal work that's needed as well. There's a friend of mine, Nadia Diallo. She's an amazing negotiation coach for professional for women of color, and she says that the first negotiation you need to win is the one with yourself.
Oh yeah.
And so, we can have Teegan, Lezlie, and I can give you all the best, language, framing, things like that. They're helpful. But if you don't believe what you're saying yourself, the person on the other side of the table is not going to believe you either. And so you got to overcome whatever voices are in you that are holding you back from making that ask, whether they be cultural, gender related, personality related, what have you. Do some of the inner work as well, in addition to arming yourself with data. And those two together are a really powerful combination that will hopefully help you drive forward and overcome any challenges with negotiation. And so I see that we're running out of time a little bit, so we're going to try and edit ourselves into what we're going to ask. So I'm going to jump to a question that's very much more tactical around resume writing.
Okay.
And so when it comes to our resumes, what resume writing techniques are you noticing or using yourself to help clients that are really helping them to be successful in getting that conversation to have an interview in the first place? And how did you experience as a recruiter sort of inform how you do things now?
Okay. So I'll be quick since we're running out of time. You want your story to be clear. You want it to be concise, and you want the value. You want the value to shine through. So you want your transitions to make sense, your scope to make sense, and then you want to quantify your accomplishments and how it relates to that scope. That maybe not always have to deal with numbers. It might be more of interpersonal type of relationships, but there's a way to do it. So make sure you bold that value, at the very top of your resume. Spell out exactly why you're the best fit for that role, and then back it up with proof on every single professional bullet point after that. If it doesn't make sense to you when you read it, or if you give it to somebody else and they're like, what does that mean? Or why is that important? Take it out. Mm-hmm. So I guess current trends, be as concise as possible, make your value very, very clear, and tell a story that makes sense. Because it's got to get through the applicant tracking system, it's got to get through the recruiter, it's got to get through the rest of the hiring team. So if you're not clear about what you did, then nobody's going to want to talk to you. Mm.
Yeah, I hear that. Accessibility is super important. Ideally, no matter who picks up your resume, it doesn't matter if they're industry insider or your brother. They should hopefully be able to understand and see your value coming through clearly on paper. And just to add to the quantifiable outcomes, qualitative outcomes are equally valid. And because not everyone's job is easily quantifiable. So don't forget that creating a new process, a new document, breaking out communication silos, those are all valuable impacts, but on the qualitative side. So we can include those as well.
Absolutely, for sure.
Yep, definitely. You're always there to bring up the importance of those qualitative accomplishments, Nitu. I really, really like that. You were one of the people that allowed me to sort of open my view and go, you know what, there's a lot that I don't talk about on that side. And now I talk a lot more about that. So thank you for always bringing that up. That's excellent.
Yeah, no doubt.
Also, that's the difference between an individual contributor's resume and a leader's resume.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Individual contributors typically are going to be able to say, I was able to accomplish this, I was able to improve this, and have numbers to back that up. Where leaders, it's a little bit more in the gray. I was able to improve the culture that may not be judged by a number. Potentially was able to salvage relationships with interdepartmental workings. Then that starts to leverage you as a more effective leader versus that individual contributor. And so those, take note if you're working on your resume.
Nice. I love that. That's really, really great. So in one of your recent posts, and this kind of combines the idea of compensation that we were just talking about and the idea of making your value known in your resume. So in one of your recent posts, you wrote that, quote, compensation thoughts cross a recruiter's mind as soon as they see your experience. And you also said that you're never worth as much as you are when you first walk in the door. And that post really related that idea to the resume and the LinkedIn profile, and making sure that a job seeker really represents their worth and what they plan to ask for in compensation. So what are some of the ways that job seekers can accomplish that?
So recruiters do something called benchmarking. And so when we're looking at who we potentially want to bring into our organization, we're going to be looking, an easy way to look at is our competitors. What talent do our competitors have? Where are they getting their talent from? What company is being bought out? And there may be some overlap where the the company that's doing the acquisition might let go some of that great talent from the company that they're absorbing. Can we get them? And so on LinkedIn, for example, make sure that your company is tied to the company profile. So if you set your LinkedIn up a long time ago, it may not actually be tied. Go in there, correct that. If your company has odd job titles, use the industry standard job title, and then in parentheses, use the job title that they actually gave you. But so that way the algorithm's going to pick up on it and the human being's going to pick up on it. If it's like XYZ number 3, I'm going to have no idea that that actually means that you were a business analyst. And so if you have an odd job title, make sure that that job title is there in your LinkedIn profile, in your resume. Job titles matter. In terms of one trick in creating your value is explain what company you're coming from. And so if you have a little blurb underneath what company you came, maybe like the revenue of the company or what that company's niche was, like a lot of startups, for example, fail. Maybe you were a business analyst or, IT support or marketing or whatever for a startup that went under, and you've had a couple of job hops because you've been working in these startups. Explain what that startup was. I just recently had a client whose startup went under during Brexit. And so I would have never guessed that, like I didn't even put 2 and 2 together, but that was because the company's funding was from overseas, not American dollars. And so it's kind of explaining a blurb, eliminating any red flags. It's going to make you more competitive, in addition to making your accomplishments very clear. This is what my scope was. This is how across my career I've been able to expand that scope of responsibilities, and this is what impact I've had. This is the additional training I've been in. These are the boards I sit on or the organizations that I volunteer with. So you're more of a value add. If you're only checking off boxes on a job description, you're not going to be hired. It's not enough to meet the job description's requirements. You have to have a unique value proposition and let that shine throughout your resume and LinkedIn to make you that candidate that is going to shine through other candidates.
I love it. I love that focus. I love that. Pretty much our whole conversation has come down to controlling your narrative. And you've mentioned several times, like, eliminate red flags, eliminate basically questions in general that aren't, ooh, tell me more about this. If there's any questions that are like, wait a minute, that's bad. So I love that you talk about getting the narrative in there and eliminating any gray area or questions. That's so cool.
Yeah, and that could even be like an abbreviation. If you have some type of corporate jargon that makes sense to your corporation, but it's not used anyplace else, spell it out. Don't abbreviate or don't use a term that isn't across the board. So that way everybody can understand the value that you brought or your breadth of experience.
Yeah, definitely. Accessibility is a huge, rule that's kind of been interwoven with everything we've said so far. So thanks for just underscoring another dimension of how we can do that. And so just thank you to everyone for, being with us here. We're about to close it out and start to land the plane with our last 2 questions that are standard that we ask to every single one of our guests. So Teegan, if you could wake up tomorrow and the one thing that you feel is really broken in the hiring process was fixed, what would that be?
Everyone's going to hate me for this, but I wish that we could rely more on technology. Human beings are flawed. And so if we stop letting biases impact decisions, we could probably make better decisions. And so probably not what anybody wants to hear on here. But I think that if we could trust in the technology that we create and allow our support staff to be able to utilize it in a way, I mean, like, just think about sorting resumes, for example. That is a feature on applicant tracking systems, but many organizations don't allow their recruiters to use it. They say, no, you have to look at every single resume. The burnout and the lack of time that contributes to it, it's a snowball effect. So if a recruiter didn't have to go through 3,000 resumes there and was able to rely on the technology to actually be able to sort through and find quality candidates, they're going to have more time to be able to spend on that candidate. And in addition to that, and if the person isn't a good fit, then the organization being able to rule out that candidate sooner, so that candidate can move on and go on to the next opportunity instead of being dragged throughout a process, knowing that there's no chance that they're going to get this job. I think that's a huge disservice to both sides, not only the organization, but also the candidate.
Gotcha. So a couple of responses. One, Lezlie, I think we should try and get a guest on at some point who really is in the weeds of, HR tech at this point in time and AI and all of that applicant tracking systems. I think we should try and do that to help demystify and have a deeper conversation. The one challenge that I can kind of see, and I hear where you're coming from in terms of technology having the ability to help us overcome some of our innate human biases, is the fact that humans create the algorithms that are supposed to do this work, and they get propped up as being infallible because they're an algorithm, forgetting that a human created it, right? For anyone out there, there's a great documentary called Coded Bias on Netflix, which I watched recently.
Oh, it's fantastic.
That has some really, great conversation around this stuff. And so I think we definitely need to have this as a topic at some point. So that's all I'll say about that. And over to you, Lezlie, for our final question.
Yeah, absolutely. So final question would be, if you could reveal, and I think this is really good for Teegan because you've got some of that sort of behind the scenes. So if you could reveal one employer insider secret to job seekers that would help them get hired more quickly, what would that be?
Be visible. So if you are active in your space, you are going to get hired more quickly. People are going to be fighting for you versus you having to fight for their attention. If you're involved in professional organizations, if you're active on LinkedIn, and I don't mean being an influencer, I just mean maybe making some thoughtful comments or posts every once in a while, on a consistent basis. Maybe every once in a while is once weekly for you, or maybe twice a week for you, whatever works, and the availability that you have, you're going to get through the process much more quicker if people are coming to you versus you having to go to them.
I like that. Great. Yep, absolutely. It's that strategy. It's that tactical sort of approach that says, I'm not just going to sit back and blast out 1,000 online applications and see what happens. I'm going to, apply online sometimes to jobs that make sense, but also I'm going to do all these different steps and all this different work that brings my efforts together into something that means more as a whole than it did as a sum of its parts.
Yeah, because you've already been able to prove you're trustworthy, that you can get along with people, that you're not gonna, engage in petty back and forth on LinkedIn. If you're not doing it on LinkedIn, you probably won't do it in the workforce. Your thought leadership, regardless if you're a janitor, like, what is the best way to fold toilet paper, to if you're a CEO. Every single position in an organization is just as valuable as the next. And your creativity, your innovation, what you bring to it, that is going to separate you in the industry and have people coming to you.
Yep. I love that. Niatu, did you have anything else to add?
I would just say that it's really important for everyone out there to try and just master your narrative, I think, is the biggest takeaway from this conversation today. We're all unique. We have a unique set of experiences, and that is the only lane that you need to be running in. There are going to be people out there who might have similar or relatively equal qualifications to you. Fine. But then how do you stand apart from them? What is your unique flavor, your difference, your spin, your flavor on things that you can really bring about? And that's how you're going to help yourself to stand apart from the pack. And you can proactively take control and explain these things so that you're drawing the connections for the employer rather than having them draw them for you, which is not going to serve to your favor. And so if there's anything you walk away with from this conversation today, is control your narrative to the best of your degree and try and make shine how you stand apart and are different from others. And that should hopefully help you find an employer that's in alignment and seeking someone like you versus somebody else.
That's my biggest takeaway, is that if you're a candidate, you want to be at an organization that is going to let you shine in the way that you want to shine. And so if you're transparent, if you're honest with what you need, what you're good at, the type of value that you want to bring, and even the areas of growth that you're interested in pursuing, that's going to have that alignment to keep you happy in your career and to keep you on the trajectory that you want to be on. It's a lot of work. It is not easy. It's intentional, and it's a living document. But if you do the work, the joy and the satisfaction that you get, it's so worth it.
Yep. That ties into a concept that I talk about future you, be nice to future you. And you're right. It's a lot of work, but if you just get over your, avoidance of starting it. Once you start it and you keep it going, it's something that helps you throughout your entire career. And it even helps you on a personal level to sort of apply some of these things about growth and development and getting yourself out there and learning from other people and making relationships and all of these things that apply to your life as well and to, throughout the rest of your career. So as much as it is work, once you get into it and you get over some of the initial hurdles, it feels less like work. It benefits you more personally and in your career. So I love that. Teegan, where can people find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. So Teegan Bartos, or I have a website, joltyourcareer.today, but I use LinkedIn more than my website. So feel free to connect with me if anybody has any questions or would like some input on, a confidential or personal situation. Direct message me and I can try to help you out in the best I can. Excellent.
You also have a hashtag, right? Hashtag #JoltYourCareer. Yes, on LinkedIn.
Yes, that is what I use.
Awesome. Go ahead and follow that to anybody watching. Also, Nia too has hashtag Avenir Careers, and we have hashtag Behind Hiring for this monthly series that we do. Anything else, guys, before we sign off and say goodbye?
No, just thank you so much for having me on. I hope the insights kind of help people understand the other side of the coin. It's not necessarily right, but it's human. And so hopefully understanding both sides, can kind of get people to come closer to the middle.
Yep. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, Teegan. Yep. Thanks, Nia, too, for being here. And thank you to everyone who was here live. And if you're catching the replay, go ahead and leave us a comment. Let us know that as well. And we will see you all next month for Behind Hiring. And I'll see everybody next week for Career Tip Tuesdays. Everybody have a good one.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.